Hey, what's up? I'm back in Chicago. I feel like every time I turn on this camera, or at least most of the time, I'm expected to tell what my next step is or what the next move is, or what the general plan is. And to be very honest, I genuinely don't know. Sometimes I really come up with it on the spot and I stick with that plan. So like that, the day or the moment I'm recording the videos when I'm actually brainstorming. Other times I do have a general semblance, so I have moments I want to create, and the job really is just to find a way to connect those moments with planning and execution. Um, but right now, I honestly don't know. I just know there's stuff that have to be done, and I have to do stuff to get to those moments where I have to get those stuff done. For example, I have to finish this internship. I say have to in a very happy manner because it's been a very awesome internship. I have to get that done. I have to also do my RA training. I have to be and get back to Pittsburgh with all my stuff, which are broken up into two different areas, one being in Chicago, one being in Maryland. So I have to find a way to get them together and get them to Pittsburgh, which is going to be a hassle. Cause I remember when I came back from Pittsburgh to Maryland, it was a terrible weather day and it was just raining. Then I had to move a bunch of stuff from an SGB retreat, student government board retreat, uphill, which was like 15, 20 minutes, and it was raining. And then I had to get there, and the door was locked, but some people let me in, and then I was able to get my stuff, which I probably should have been able to do, but who cares? And then I had to call an Uber to drive me all the way to Maryland, and the Uber was has like the Uber always seemed like it was going cool like half the time because like it was very terrible weather. Um, and the Uber driver kept on looking back and said, I'm not sure about how far this thing is. So I had to gaslight him that it wasn't that far of a drive. It was a very far drive. I feel really bad, but I did tip him very well. So I think we have a relationship now where he wants to actually drive me back to Pittsburgh, which is nice, but it's gonna be hefty in terms of price. But that being said, that's what's just generally boggling in my mind, like, or not even boggling, just those are the stuff like RA training, getting back to Pittsburgh, finishing internship. Those stuff just keep on like popping up in my mind and seem to take up the most brain space. But yeah, like stuff besides that, I haven't really thinking about. Project Phillips, I've been thinking about loosely. Dig, I already set Dig and Quest. I already said I'm gonna put those on the back burner for now, so I can focus on internship stuff. At least one, two. I feel like when I get into the week, because I usually say I'm gonna focus on the internship project, then get it goes pretty smoothly, or it's much faster paced. I have more free time than I intended. So I might just like in that free time, I might go back and work on Dig. Quest will definitely be an August thing though. But yeah, I don't know. I think I want to be a better speaker. That was something I was also thinking about. So I was listening to the video yesterday. Actually, I'm just going to treat this as a random episode where I can talk about anything I want for however long I feel like doing so. But I was listening to the episode from yesterday. I remember I was talking about Trump's AI action plan, or the Trump administration, I should say, and that I was listening to that. I remember a key thing I said is that I actually hadn't read the thing, so I actually don't know that much. I think I was really happy with myself that I said that because usually what I might do is that I might say, okay, I might still talk about something I have a very loose idea on, then come to later find out that I was like completely wrong and always sucks. So I have to go back and correct myself. And sometimes I just don't, which is something I forget to do, which is just terrible because I never want to misinform someone or so I'm really happy I was able to be humble and say I don't know this. My knowledge base isn't there; it's non-existent. I've seen some loose stuff here and there. I've heard rumors here and there. I did watch a video by Theo3. He's a really good YouTuber I like that kind of just covers topics in a very he goes very I think in depth or does a broad overview at least. Broad overview is probably better than to say in depth. I think it's hard to do because like there's a lot of complexities, a lot of tech stuff. But he does a good broad overview for like an hour, and you can't get a genuine semblance of the topic or the issue at hand and all that type of stuff. But with the AI action plan, from what I understand at least, it's not too crazy in my opinion. There's obviously some bad stuff. There's some stuff that is debatable. I know something I was interested in that piqued my interest was the copyright stuff, which was more so in his keynotes. I don't know if keynote is the right word, but in his conference of it, he was talking about the idea of copyright and how we can't be worried too much about bureaucracies when it comes to copyright because if we're worried about, oh, can you should we copyright all the articles AI has access to that's going to kind of impact or negatively impact the training of these AI models that we use. And when you put that into the context of geopolitics, and you have the US and you have China, and you have one country who's willing to bypass those regulations, have another country that's restricted by those regulations, what's the outcome? I thought that was interesting because I personally, I know I'm a bit lazy. I know there's a bunch of other reasons I have for this, but it's like, and ideally, I would love an AI model trained on all possible data points so I can get my ideal answer. However, I also know there's a lot of bad actors. I also know there's a lot of other factors. Like, people work hard for the stuff they do. So imagine being a journalist and then you have your own website. Actually, that's not true. Imagine working for Imagine working for the New York Times and then you make really good articles, but then what happens is that no one goes to your articles, they just go to ChatGPT, which acts as the middleman between your article and people who are interested about the topic you cover. So you never get credit, you never actually get the people clicking on the New York Times. So that's something that's interesting. And how does that work in general? I have no idea. I don't know. A cool thing I saw, this isn't my idea. I think it was the Theo I was listening to. But essentially, the idea is, okay, let's say we do provide copyright for certain articles and stuff like that. But the U.S. provides U.S. funded research as data for these AI companies based in the U.S. So like if a Chinese company can make Mickey Mouse fighting Goku or something like that, we have US companies actually providing useful stuff. Even there's obviously some stuff I was thinking about that, because I think, okay, let's say that happens, you still have the case of like deepfakes. So let's say have your model that's much better at creating videos and stuff like that. You would ideally, I think I would personally be more comfortable with that being like the best video generation model. I would want to be a US based company, so you can have at least more understanding of how it works. You can have more understanding of its capabilities and more so the use cases as well. So in terms of Hollywood, I think have it, even like with Hollywood, there's no there's no doubt in my mind that AI is going to be used in Hollywood to generate videos or something along those lines. It's just a matter of who. I think that's really the game here. So I know Netflix is trying to do it. I know Disney for sure is figuring out how they can do it on their end. So it's really just a matter of seeing who does it. I think, honestly, to be honest, I'm not that picky with it because I don't make money off of it. I don't care too much if Netflix, Disney, or Warner Bros. Makes another $1 billion using video generation in terms of their IP and all that, or if China steals that IP to go make more money. That's not something I'm personally interested in. I just or I personally invested in. I think it's interesting. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting space. I always feel bad. I don't feel bad. I think I become very humble when it comes to the AI space in general. Because I remember I was at a lunch today, and they were talking about AI, and they were talking about AI in terms of sentience and all those like AGI type stuff. And I wanted to be like, a very small part of me wanted to be like, oh, that doesn't really make sense. But to be honest, I like in terms of my understanding of AI, because I actually work with it to some degree compared to the people who were talking about it. I don't know that much. I don't. I wouldn't say I know much more than them. I just have a different view because I've had different experiences than them. So it could be completely correct in some scenario where their outlook of AI technology is completely correct, and like their prediction for the future is correct as well. So I never wanted to. I'm happy that I don't have that outlook of like, oh, I use RAG or I use an API for an AI. I use ChatGPT's API, so I know all of this when it comes to AI, which is not the case at all. It's just a matter of really understanding, really just understanding why you have your certain outlooks. And I think that's something I always have to do whenever I talk about AI, because usually when I'm talking about AI, it's with people who don't work with AI. And I think it's very easy when talking to a non-technical person to kind of have this smug attitude, like, oh, this person has no idea what they're talking about. But really, the more I think about it and the more I learn, it's like, okay, I actually have no idea what's going on. And that's like kind of the excitement of this. I'm learning much more. All I can really do is offer you my insight with my experience, and hopefully that provides something of value to you in your understanding of the topic and your prediction of how it might turn out. But yeah, I think that's my outlook. I'm really happy I have that outlook. I think it's something that I've been talking about for a long time now. It's maturing. I think that's part of my maturing process. Is to not be some smug kid who thinks he knows all that and all this. Because really, on one hand, like the more you know, the more you realize the more you realize you don't know. which is always awesome. But also, it's like there's nothing to be gained and being smug about any topic. Like I know when I was younger, if I knew something about superheroes, I always just felt, oh, none of these guys didn't want to talk about superheroes. But even now, when I learn about superheroes or when I see people talk about superheroes, like, oh, dang, I become interested because I know there's so much about superheroes that I don't know. For example, Darkseid's first appearance in DC Comics was actually in a Jimmy Olsen comic book, which is really interesting. Interesting. I forgot the issue, but it was a Jimmy Olsen comic book, which I hope they reference in somewhere in the DC universe. But getting back on track, it's very cool to see AI topics in general. But yeah, I'm still gonna be looking to the AI action plan. I think it's interesting. I can't wait to see how it affects jobs. I think that's gonna be something to be on the lookout for. I know people want to try and get people more used to using AI tools, and I wonder how that's gonna work. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's a matter of like how I don't know. I think it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. What I'm interested in, I think not enough people talk about is the digital divide. Because if you have some schools where they don't have iPads, laptops, and they talk about implementing AI, in fact, that's a step too advanced. If you because they don't even have the tool to like even play around with AI in a proper setting for let's say K-12 schools. Um, so that's gonna be really interesting if that actually makes an impact in the outcome. Because let's say we live in an AI native society, and by AI native I mean like the stuff we use AI, like your job, you're expected to know how to use AI. Then do these kids who don't have experience using AI at all, like what happens to that? That's gonna be something to be on the lookout for. But also, look, based on the MIT study that I have kind of a negative relationship with, there is a core idea that just using AI in general, just like if you use I guess the idea is if you use AI for your brainstorming and your execution process, you're kind of just going to become dumb. You're not going to your thinking isn't going to improve, and it's just kind of going to be like, okay, you just like got an AI to do it for yourself. So what if the kids who actually don't use AI are better off? And that's something I never want to dismiss. I know everyone says that if you don't use AI, you're going to be left behind and all that. I sincerely believe that's true, but I do think there's a degree to acknowledge that maybe people who don't use AI might actually be better off than people who use AI and don't actually take into account the risk of over relying on it. So think of like coding. I think is probably the best field for this. Think of a programmer who's never used AI, right? And have a programmer who uses AI but over relies on it. So their thinking never actually improves as they get farther and farther into their career. And then the I guess what's the word here? The cognitive depth or the technical depth increases for them. Whereas you have someone who gets to that same level in their career and hasn't used AI. Those two people have different levels of thinking. However, eventually, let's say you get to you want to encounter a novel problem, and the AI model just isn't particularly good encountering that novel problem. The programmer who hasn't actually used AI and over relied on it, compared to the programmer who has, is probably likely to be more useful in that situation. Um, but yeah. But you can choose a third person who is like who doesn't over rely on it. It's actually a good programmer, so he probably beats out both of them by a large margin. I think that's the ideal synthesis to reach as a person when it comes to being a programmer. And I think that's where I'm trying to go because I know sometimes I lean to over relying on that. And sometimes it's easy to say, hey, the lines of code aren't actually important to the project I'm working on right now. But then it's those lines of code that actually enable me to learn more. I am happy though that I don't know how to prompt engineer that well yet. So a lot of the times I get bugs that teach me a lot more about my code than if I just wrote it in one clean sitting. But yeah, I feel like I'm going on too much just rambling at this point, so I'm going to end it here. So besides that, I have nothing else to say. So have a great day.